generally, how do we grow this influence of black leaders, men and women, that can represent our industry inside the ANC, inside the policy-making structures?
Get to grips with the digital environment, put together best practices, what works and what doesn't, very importantly.
In the project that we're doing in Chapulati, we've created a linking bridge between those two little areas there. So it becomes a matter of just 10 minutes walk from one side to the other.
So my message to our CEOs and those chief investment officers is, where at the end of the day do you want to see your role?
So by treating all of our water back to a stage where we can bring it back into the process, we're in effect saving around about 35% of our water usage on site.
And we are live. Welcome to greeneconomy.tv. I'm your host and facilitator, Byron McDonald. This week, we have Chris Whyte, Director of African Circular Economy Network. You will be going in conversation with Gordon Brown, publisher of Green Economy Journal, and we have the student, Nolwazi Mbhele. But before I go ahead, as I say each show, greeneconomy.tv provide insights and intelligence on all sustainability-related matters. So let's invite on our guest. Hey, guys.
Hi, Byron. Nice to see you as always.
Same here. This side.
Hello.
Hi to Chris and Nolwazi.
I'm going to hand over to you, Gordon. It's a new show, a new week. It's a series. I'm quite excited. Viewers will be quite excited. So I'm handing over to you, Gordon.
Thank you very much indeed, Byron. And yes, a very warm welcome to Nolwazi and certainly to Chris Whyte, expert in the field of circular economy, who will join us as our standing guest for the series of discussions that we plan to have on circular economy. We plan to unpack it. We want to understand it. We want to understand how to promote it. We want to understand how to become professionals, people that are interested in this topic, both from a point of view of companies, municipalities, but also from a point of view of young students and professionals interested in this topic. How do you become an expert? How do you become a practitioner? So these are some of the conversations that we're going to have. So without further ado, I'd like to ask our guests to introduce themselves. I will start. My name is Gordon Brown. I'm publisher of Green Economy Journal, among other things, involved in the energy sector and the media sector for many years, and it's my privilege to host the show today. So perhaps I can move on to Chris. Perhaps if you can give us a brief introduction, just tell us a little bit about yourself, please, and then we'll move on to Nolwazi. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you very much for having me here. I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be pretty exciting. I'm Chris Whyte. I'm a director of the African Circular Economy Network and also one of the founding members of the ACEN Foundation. My focus is looking at developing, understanding, unpacking the circular economy throughout Africa. So I'm really looking forward to the chats. Thank you.
Thanks very much indeed. Nolwazi, over to you.
Hello, my name is Nolwazi Mbhele. I'm from Witbank. I'm a student at CPUT. I am doing currently my 4th year of environmental management. And yeah, I'm excited to learn more about circular economy today. Thank you.
Great stuff. Thanks very much indeed. So Chris, I think like so many things in the green economy or in the broader economic space, we come up with names, we come up with terms, and often it takes a while for people to learn what they mean. I, for my part, came across the term circular economy some time ago. I was introduced to a professional. I was organizing a conference, and he presented himself as an expert in this field, and it was really interesting. And we had him join the conversation at that time under the heading of zero waste, which was the topic of that particular session. And what I learned from him was that there was, in fact, this body of information, this body of work that had been developed and it was labeled circular economy. And subsequently, it's gained in recent years, I'd say in the last 10 years, and certainly from where I see the world, it's a topic that reappears and has really developed into a fairly significant aspect of thinking under this broader heading of green economy. Can I ask you to just give us a sense, what exactly is circular economy? What are its origins and what are its objectives?
That's a long question. So I think, again, we've got to avoid the local buzzwords. I didn't know I was a circular economy expert until somebody told I was, because I've been working in this field for 20 years plus. The reality is it's an amalgamation of a number of thought processes and movements from the past. We talk about sustainability, we talk about the green economy, but there's also, we've gone from cradle to cradle to cradle to grave. Now we're talking about restorative, regenerative economies. Effectively, circular economy is an amalgamation of all of these different things. And the circular economy we've got to be very careful not to mistake it for yet another buzzword for recycling. The simple fact is that recycling as we know it is in reality an economically unviable opportunity. But circular economy looks at it from a different perspective, whereby we understand the value chain, we understand the life cycle analysis, we look at the origins, we look at the ends, we look at the impacts. So circular economy is a multi-sectoral approach. It's not just about waste. The waste economy can certainly contribute substantially to the circular economy and can achieve probably 15 of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. But the reality is that it crosses multiple different sectors. So there's water, energy, infrastructure, health, nutrition, education, tourism. These are all elements and sectors that contribute to or are part of the circular economy. So it's not just about resources. It's about understanding inputs, outputs, impacts, and outcomes.
Right. Yeah, very interesting. And then just to touch on, the purpose of all of this, right? I mean, let's just speak briefly about the condition that we find the world in right now. I mean, we've seen recently a great deal of focus on plastics, waste plastics. We've seen an incredible global reaction by manufacturers and restaurateurs around plastic straws, for example. We've seen, plastic in these massive collections of plastic in the oceanic gyros. We're seeing species extinctions and species biospheres under threat. And I guess the list goes on. And we've just obviously experienced the global pandemic, which many commentators feel is a consequence of mismanagement or abuse or degradation of, and I suppose the adulteration of the relationship between man and nature. We certainly are living in a world full of challenges. To what extent would this practice of circular economy, in its ultimate goal, in its ultimate objective, to what extent does it seek to address these challenges? I mean, is that a fair question, or is it a bit out there? Maybe just give me your sense to that.
Absolutely. I think what we're going to be really aware of is that if anything good has come out of the pandemic, it has been the fact that we've understood that normal was not good. We need to change the way that we're doing things. And there's been a lot of voices raised in terms of many different components, from the plastic issues to biodiversity, global climate change, etc. What the pandemic has really shown us is the fragility of the systems that are in place. So global supply chains were brought to a grinding halt. We've seen issues leading up to that with, for example, Operation National Sword from the Chinese in terms of closing cross-border transportation of waste products. But the circular economy looks at all different elements. So whether you're looking at food, resources, infrastructure, equipment, supplies, cross-border application of different types of crops. We've really understood now the fragility of that system in terms of moving stuff through. And it might not just be a ship stuck in the Suez Canal. This was a massive issue that affected us globally. And ultimately, what we want to try and see out of this is an embrace of circular economy and the circular economy principles, because it does reach right across every sector of what we do, what we touch, what we see. Whether you are a consumer, whether you are a producer, whether you're just Joe Public trying to figure out where I'm going in life. The circular economy impacts pretty much everything. So we're looking at all the different elements that contribute to the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. And that is quite well spelled out in terms of the 17 different applications and outcomes that we're looking at. But it allows us to be able to really pull together our ideas and bring together this movement, which is now seen as the circular economy, that allows us to understand all the different dynamics that fit into what we understand. So it's not just about the materials moving from A to B. It's like, where are those materials from? How much energy does it take to create those materials? Is there another alternative for those materials? How do we handle those materials at the end of life? What are the impact of those materials on people? The humanosphere is vitally important in terms of the circular economy. It's not just about economics and about the environment. It's about people. And people are a central focus to the circular economy. So when we look at the outcome, what we want to see is we want to see a better world. We want to see an opportunity where we change the dynamic. And it no longer makes sense for us to export raw materials from Africa into Europe. There are directives and issues that we're seeing now in Europe that are driving their agenda in terms of low carbon development. They can no longer look at the application of traditional energy and material sciences. So how do we look at developing systems where we take this as an opportunity to develop Africa and the developing world, to engage with the different opportunities, to embrace the circular economy, to look at shortening the value chain or shortening the supply chain that allows us to look at empowering people where they should be empowered, as opposed to the big global corporates. We need to look at everybody across that entire value chain. So the circular economy is a very high level thinking movement that's looking at every single aspect of the economy and how these different things fit in together. So we've got to evolve ourselves past any thought process that this might be just another buzzword. It may change. As I said, I didn't know I was a circular economy expert until somebody said you're a circular economy expert. But I'm still trying to figure out what I want to be when I grow up, and that might be something different in 10 years' time. But it's the same initiative. It's about making sure that the outcomes are the same. It's about people. It's about uplifting the lives of many. It's about ensuring that there's responsibility across corporates, across governments, across boundaries. It's about ensuring that we look at a sustainable future going forward and how we understand the intrinsic links between issues of climate change, looking at biodiversity problems, the pollution of our planet, land use change issues that are driving desertification and climate change, and understanding how each of these are pulled together in a way that we all benefit. So circular economy is about all of us.
Great stuff. I'm going to hand over to Nolwazi in a second. Before that, I just want to, we've got a question from social media from Lethea McCann, who asks, what role will communities and justice play in the conversation about circular economy? Perhaps you can tackle that question, then I'm going to hand over to Nolwazi for a question. Thank you very much, Chris.
Thank you, and thanks, Lethea. I think it's a vital question. The reality is that communities and society are a central focus around the circular economy. There's a lot of education that needs to happen in that sector, but I think we're already seeing it being driven, I think, with social media and other applications where people are wanting to understand what the impact is. They're wanting to know where they can make a difference. So social justice and communities, these are vitally important components of how we drive that. And we need to understand that we have different mechanisms in Africa than we would have in Europe. So when we look at local system design, like we're doing at the moment with extended producer responsibility regulations, how do you ensure that the people at what we call the bottom of the pyramid are empowered through that process to uplift communities right through the system? So communities and justice are vitally important. Justice is a specific concern when we talk about decent jobs. We talk about access to services and sustainable livelihoods. So they are a key component of it. This is not just green economy and circular economy is not just being driven by the corporates. There is a key focus on communities and social justice.
Yeah, thank you very much. Nolwazi, over to you.
Okay, so my question is, how far do you think South Africa is? Does it still need to work on, implementing a circular economy, with companies, or are we still behind? Yeah, that's my question.
It's all relative, Nolwazi. I mean, we need to understand where we are in the spectrum. So in Africa, I would say that South Africa is probably one of the most advanced with regards to circular economy development. But we still have a huge way to go. There's a lot of work happening in the circular economy that's happening in silos. We're not seeing the integration between different initiatives. We're not seeing that networking and communication between them. So we need to look at it from several different perspectives. One is to drive it from a policy and a directives perspective. We need to understand how it can tie in through supply chain management, green procurement, through material specification, and understanding the issues around our international commitments to the UNFCCC, to the Paris Climate Agreement, and how we can contribute to that. And the circular economy provides a number of different roads and resolutions towards that. There are others who are doing fantastic work. Rwanda is a leader in circular economy. They've done amazing stuff in terms of their international policies. The economic growth of Rwanda over the last 10, 15 years has been largely driven by the policies and directives that are looking at their international trade. Other countries are doing some amazing stuff. Ghana, Nigeria, there's a huge drive towards it. And Africa is also looking at this through the likes of the African Circular Economy Alliance. And this is a government-led initiative founded by Nigeria, Rwanda, and South Africa. I think the current head is South African from the Department of Environmental Affairs, Department of Forestry, Fishery and Environmental Affairs, Whyte Mokoena. And that's a revolving chair that'll happen over time. But that's linking very closely in with the African Development Bank and the African Union. And that also needs us to look at tying up to the Africa Free Trade Agreement and the opportunities that could bring us as a continent. So when you put us into comparison with Europe, we are way behind a lot of countries, and there's a lot of work to be done. We're seeing a huge initiative now through the new Green Deal in Europe that is driving directives and policies in terms of low carbon growth and development, looking at circular design, looking at green design, looking at all sorts of different issues around the circular economy that are really going to drive the way that Europe does things in the future. So whether you're looking at resources, energy, water, these are all coming into play. And the likes of the Netherlands and Finland are definitely leaders in this environment, and they have contributed or committed to a 100% circular economy by 2030 or 2040. So everything that they're driving towards that is written in their policy directives, whether it's trade, manufacturing, design, energy, all of these are coming together. We've got a long way to go to meet those requirements, but I think that we can stand on the shoulders of those before us and emulate what they've done, and it has great promise in terms of unlocking the opportunities in Africa.
So thanks very much for that feedback. We have a question from social media from Shakira Bayer, and she asks, will companies align circular economy initiatives with climate goals, or continue to treat these as discrete initiatives, in your opinion? What's your response to that, Chris?
Well, I think the opportunity is to understand that circular economy is more of an all-encompassing sort of focus. There are specific directives with regards to low-carbon energy development. There are specific requirements in terms of sustainability and meeting sustainable development goals. And a lot of this is driven through corporate initiatives that are based on a global scale. So we have a big drive, and we see it in this country as well. A lot of the big circular economy applications are being driven by global corporates within our boundaries. But there's a huge opportunity to try and see how this all comes together. They should not be seen as discrete and as individual. They are seen as one is an impact of another that creates an outcome related to that. So we need to bring those together, and circular economy is a dialogue that does that. It brings together our UNFCCC agreements. It brings together our corporate sustainability initiatives. It brings together the different issues around green economy. So circular economy will help to focus those and bring those together. And you see that right now. Sometimes what companies are doing is they're saying we're looking at this particular initiative, but the outcomes and the impacts are described in terms of the SDGs, or they're described in terms of the carbon footprint. So we're starting to see a movement towards a regularized or a sort of a common understanding of what the outcomes and impacts are of what they're doing.
So, Chris, I'd like to just get a bit more practical for a moment, and thanks for that high-level context. I think it's super important. What is happening? How does green economy offer itself or present itself, if you like, to the customer? And I would define the customer as companies, but also as municipalities. These are organizations. I suppose it's consumers as well, but really it's companies and municipalities. These are the organizations that are consuming. They are the ones that are producing, and obviously the ones doing the service delivery. Talk to us about the structure. You're a director of the African Circular Economy Network. Tell us a little bit about that organization, and also tell us about the foundation that you've recently launched in Brussels, please.
Sure. So there's a few bits to that discussion. First and foremost, I think the African Circular Economy Network is something that was started in 2016 by a group of passionate professionals. And I think it's grown in terms of understanding that again, this is not just a South African initiative. This is something that we need to look at cross-border. And to date, we have hundreds of members across 31 African countries and over 2,500 followers in 53 African countries. So it's creating a directive in terms of understanding the opportunities in circular economy and bringing together not just professionals, but interested parties, bringing together governments, bringing together corporates, and looking towards the development of common goals around the circular economy. The evolution towards the ACEN Foundation, which we have just launched in Brussels, is simply that ACEN is a non-profit organization. It's a membership-based organization, and it's been driven by people with passion, not by people with any resources. So we're really trying to look at resourcing the impact and the effectiveness of ACEN itself, and the foundation is a vehicle to be able to do that. And again, I think it brings me back to the discussion we had before in terms of aligning with the new Green Deal that's coming out of Europe. They are focusing on Africa. Africa has the resources, and Africa is going to be a trading partner for a long time, but it needs to be done differently. So the opportunity is to start looking at investment and development within Africa, looking at that along the lines of circular economy principles to develop that. So all of these things come together in terms of understanding how it fits together. But you spoke about who the customer is. And that's an important point, because the customer is everybody. But you need to differentiate the customer. So the customer can be the man in the street. The customer can be communities. The customer can be local municipalities, district, national municipalities. It can be big corporates, SMMEs. But when you look at understanding the customer, you then need to understand what the how you deal with each of those customers and what each of those customers gets out of it. So when we're looking at corporates and take policy, for example, policy is something that we need to do and work with our government agencies to develop policy that creates that enabling environment. But then also we need to do that in association with industry, because industry needs to be able to look at that policy being open to creating this investment into the circular economy and driving that supply chain management through sustainable processes. So all of that comes down to, again, your business modeling and understanding that at the end of the day, you've got your customer. So whether that customer is a corporate or a national government who's driving directives and policies, at the end of the day, the outcomes are also important to the customer. So what you want to see is that every man, woman, and child and dog and cat who's on this beautiful planet of ours will see a difference at the end of the day. That we start to see how circularity allows us to engage with nature, allows us to engage with each other, and allows us to create a more even platform in terms of sustainable development for everybody going forward.
What a pleasure. Nolwazi, any further questions from your side?
I think he just answered one of the questions I wanted to ask, because it was going to be about how I'm still a student and I recently found out about circular economy. And then my question is going to be about, will this change the way we humans behave towards the environment and how we treat like our products and, in terms of like recycling and everything like that? Will this encourage people to do so?
Absolutely. I mean, always, there's another element to it. And again, it comes back to the understanding of the multi-sectoral approach of the circular economy. So when we look at some of the big issues, so social media is saying plastics are the big enemy. There's a lot of big enemies out there. Unfortunately, plastic is just one of the most visible ones that we're looking at. But there are solutions and systems and technologies for recycling and managing all plastic. But again, policies and procedures and systems need to be put into place to be able to accommodate us to allow these things to happen. But when you look at the impact in terms of any individual, the circular economy is about understanding if you've got that plastic waste in the environment, it's not just about the unsightly look of plastic in the environment. Plastic has multiple other impacts in terms of our food chain, in terms of biodiversity. Before it even enters the ocean, we have massive issues from a health perspective in that contaminated or stagnant water can spread disease. We're seeing impacts in terms of our urban environment where storm drains are blocked up, and that exacerbates any small scale or local flooding events. That causes damage to property, it can cause damage to life. So everything is impacted along this value chain. So we need to understand it from our own perspectives. And I think the more people need to understand circular economy is that it's not just about that plastic bottle. It's about what's the impact of that plastic bottle. Where did the plastic bottle come from? How much energy did it take to create that plastic bottle? Where's that plastic bottle going afterwards? Can we recreate that? Can we use something different? What are the transport logistics? There are so many components to the circular economy, and it's creating that knowledge of the interconnectedness between sectors where we start to really get to grip with understanding what the circular economy is all about and how it will benefit and impact everybody.
Thanks so very much indeed for that, Chris. And, so just
I have another question.
Go ahead, Nolwazi, go ahead.
Okay. So COVID being like a unforeseen pandemic, has medical waste affected circular economy? Like, because I mean, we weren't ready for COVID, and then they had to produce a lot of masks and everything. Has it affected that circular economy?
Absolutely. First of all, I don't think that COVID was unforeseen. I think we've been predicting this sort of thing for a long time. All of these movies that have come back up about these disaster movies showing what's going to happen, and we're there. It's happening. There's not zombies walking in the street, but it's not as bad yet. But the issue around PPE has certainly caused an exacerbation of the problem. But it's also, COVID has caused disruption in the recycling and waste collection market. So there have been definite impacts from that. And there's a lot of work that's being done in terms of looking at how we deal with and handle a lot of this medical waste that's coming out of the system. And again, there are solutions and systems available for everything, but we need to understand it, and we need to embrace it, and we need to deploy these systems to look at ensuring these solutions are engaged with.
So that's all the time we have for today, Chris and Nolwazi. It's been a great conversation so far. Thanks for this process of introducing the subject, Chris. I think what we want to do next week and in subsequent weeks, let's start looking at some of the examples of how you personally, and also circular economy professionals that you're aware of, how they've been able to intervene with customers to change from perhaps a linear approach to a circular approach, and what are all the benefits and spin-offs that have arisen from that. So folks, that's what we're going to chat about next week, same time, Wednesday, 1 o'clock. Be there for the conversation. Thank you to Chris. Thank you to Nolwazi for being with us today. And thanks for the audience for tuning in. And on that note, back over to Byron, please, if you can just play us out, please, sir.
Excellent conversation. I was so tuned in. I wanted to ask a couple of questions, and I thought it would be unfair.
Next time,
but there's a lot to it, and I think this will be a great show, and it's a great initiative from your side, especially during the time we're going through. But guys, thank you so much for being on, and I'll see you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
I learned so much each show when I'm engaged in these conversations. There's more to circular economy, the value that's added to it, and it's more things added to it. So tune in each week. But as I say, greeneconomy.tv provide insight and intelligence on all sustainability related matters.
How do we grow this influence of black leaders, men and women, that can represent our industry inside the ANC, inside the policy-making structures?
Get to grips with the digital environment, put together best practices, what works and what doesn't, very importantly.
In the project that we're doing in Chaplari, we've created a linking bridge between those two little areas there. So it becomes a matter of just 10 minutes walk from one side to the other.
So my message to our CEOs and those chief investment officers is, where at the end of the day do you want to see your role?
So by treating all of our water back to a stage where we can bring it back into the process, we're in effect saving around about 35% of our water usage on site.